Three, two, one, live. Welcome, folks. How's everybody out in Facebook land doing? Love you. Got my coffee mug today. Enjoy. So, it's Sunday. It's Super Bowl Sunday. How's everybody getting ready for the game? Honestly, I have no idea who's playing. Thank you, COVID. I really don't care. You know, we got bigger things to fry these days than gladiator sports here in the United States. I mean, we're fighting that on the left, we're fighting it on the right. And we got legislation these days deciding who can compete with who. Honestly, I think 90% of the time, that kind of thing self-resolves itself. People know when they're cheating. They do. Most athletes, if they got the lesson on good sportsmanship when they were kids, like they were supposed to, because their parents weren't raging helicopter parents at the Little League meets. Yeah, we all know which parents I'm talking about, right? You know, people wouldn't feel the need to cheat. In which case they'd understand when they weren't supposed to be competing in certain groups, certain classes. The fact that we got so many people who want to cheat these days, I don't know. But anyway, it's not what I'm here about. Here today, Super Bowl Sunday. For some reason, I don't think we ended up having a big enough, important enough discussion about the laws here in the state of Idaho and the way politics work, particularly with regards to why certain individuals feel that they can still continue to deny Idahoans their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, don't worry, folks. The reason why is because that's nothing new. They've been doing it since we turned into a territory back in 1943. 48 million for the post-riot inauguration, right? So let's talk about racism here in the state of Idaho. Used to be a combination of laws out there called anti-miscegenation laws. Okay, for those of you who aren't familiar with what anti-miscegenation means, it means don't mix races. Okay. Irony is 1964. What was happening in 1964 besides Idaho becoming a territory? We were still in the middle of the Civil War, folks. We were still in the middle of the bloody Civil War. Ironically, there's actually a Civil War battle that happened here in the Idaho territory. History associated with that's particularly ugly too. Reason why is because the California volunteers linked up with the federales to conduct the Bear River Massacre. Reason why is because Mormon settlers came in and settled on territory that rightfully belonged to someone else. Yes, stolen land, folks. Stolen fucking land. Which, of course, goes back to Brigham Young doctrine. Thank you, David Norman. Yes, the David Young core doctrine. That is, LDS was about white supremacy. They did not believe that either the blacks or the indigenous people that lived here before then belonged in heaven. Yeah, is what it is. But unfortunately, that isn't the thing. The reason why is because it was largely Catholics that decided what the early laws here in the state of Idaho were, even back when it was a territory. 1963, we became a territory. 1964, our first anti-miscegenation law. Nobody in the state of Idaho who was white was allowed to marry someone who was black, indigenous, or Chinese. That went on till 1921. Except you know what happened in 1921? We didn't repeal it. We doubled down. Yes, we did. We doubled down. We increased the fines and the sentences and everything else associated with white people marrying black people or indigenous or Chinese. Yeah, 1921, we doubled down. Amazingly enough, 1959, which was 8 years before Loving versus Virginia. Who knows about Loving versus Virginia? Okay, Loving versus Virginia. This was an interracial couple who were married in a state where it was legal for them to get married. However, they had to move to Virginia, where their marriage was illegal. That went clear up to the Supreme Court. 1967, all anti-miscegenation laws were declared unconstitutional. 1967. 1967. And it took the Supreme Court to tell America, right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of happiness. Yes, the right to the pursuit of happiness transcends anti-miscegenation laws. You love the person you love, man. Doesn't matter what race they are. But, aside from that, we also know race is a social construct. We all make babies together. Yes, we do. White, black, brown, yellow. We all make babies. But seriously, 1978 or 67, 1967, Loving versus Virginia. All of the rights activism, everything else that was going on. It took a Supreme Court decision in 1967, the year before I was born, to finally put the kibosh on anti-miscegenation laws in the United States. As it was 1958. That was when Idaho finally did away with their anti-miscegenation laws. Now, let's get back to this other issue. 1853, I believe it was, San Francisco wrote the first drug enforcement law in the United States. What was this about? It was so they could give the cops a reason to harass Chinese immigrants who used opium products in San Francisco. Interesting thing about that was Idaho borrowed that from them. 1927. Interesting thing about 1927 was because 1920 and 1933. Who knows what's important about those years? 1920 and 1933. Prohibition. Yes. The Temperance movement was deeply embedded in the Republican platform. Yes, the Republican platform. That all good governance is responsible for the temperance and sobriety of their community. Okay, temperance and sobriety. Actually, that's Article 23, Article 3, Section 23 of the Idaho State Constitution, no less. All good governance is responsible for the temperance and sobriety of the people. Prohibition of ethanol and then control of the Negroes and Mexican drugs. Yeah, now 1927. 1927, reason why that was of particular importance was that was the year which was about halfway through this whole temperance prohibition, 1920 and 1933 prohibition of alcohol in the state. 1927 was when Idaho, yes, Idaho, took it upon themselves to make marijuana illegal. The reason marijuana was made illegal in 1927 was because the field hands that were working along the short line railroad, yes, field hands, the migrant workers who would work along the short line railroad back when it was short line and not Georgia Pacific or whatever else would later come on, would smoke the marijuana while they worked. Now this is old school marijuana. I mean, this is before, way before. As we all know, that marijuana isn't the marijuana we got these days, right, folks? And just like the wonders Prohibition worked for alcohol production, you know, getting us past that little 2% and 3% beer and wine, clear up to Everclear. You know, something Prohibition did for alcohol. Same thing Prohibition did for marijuana. Marijuana of 1920, you know, wasn't no reefer madness. You know, it wasn't that highly refined stuff that we have people using today for pain management, post-traumatic stress injury recovery. You know, we don't need nearly as much of that today as we would have back then. But the field hands, you know, back in those days, it's still a pain management thing. I don't know how many of you these days have actually gone out and done a good, solid, hard day's work out in the field. But you hurt when you're done. You hurt a lot when you're done. These field hands were as productive back then as they are now, because they had a little something that'd take the edge off the pain at the end of a long day. So really, what was that 1927 Prohibition really about? Was it about the intemperate use of marijuana by the field hands? No, it wasn't. Matter of fact, there was testimony by the mayor of Boise about the illegalization. And ultimately what it came down to, he just didn't want the wetbacks riding into Boise and mixing with the gentry. Yeah, nah. 1927, Mayor of Boise was supporting prohibition for marijuana because of racism. He's just looking for a convenient excuse to give the police in Boise an opportunity to arrest and harass field hands. Probably couldn't read the English. The main marijuana, the pain relief, illegal for them to be in possession of. The racism in the state of Idaho goes back, long history of it. It's the truth. It's honest. 1959, we beat the last 14 states. Here we are today. Selective enforcement of marijuana prohibition in the state of Idaho. Okay, let's be real here about how marijuana enforcement happens in the state. People in the Treasure Valley drive across the border to Ontario, Oregon once a month. They spend roughly $100 million on marijuana products in a given year. Yeah, might have been. Yeah, back when it was still hemp and not highly refined. Okay. 100 million. No, I give it an estimate of approximately 40,000 people routinely drive across the border, buy marijuana, drive on back across. 40,000. I know damn well we are not arresting 40,000 people a year for transporting marijuana across the border. Now, the police know everybody. The reason why is because it's an information sharing arrangement. Unofficial, but we all know it's there. Ontario police monitor every Idaho state license plate that parks in an Ontario or hunting dispensary. Idaho State Police and whatever other law enforcement agencies they work with are very much aware who of those 40,000 people and the owners of those unique license plates that drive across the border are, and just haven't arrested you yet. Maybe they got a reason not to arrest you. Maybe they are profiling because there are specific demographics that they would prefer to arrest over you. Yeah, think about that, folks. Think about that a lot. Think about it hard. Because if the law isn't applied to everybody equally, there is no justice. Right? 39,000 of you can drive across the border, go back home without so much as a howdy do. Another 1,000 of you are currently on felony probation because of something you did last year. "54 of those were veterans who were driving across the border to self-medicate either for pain, post-traumatic stress injury, a number of other things. So let's be honest, when the police say they need more laws to enforce, there's 40,000 individuals they could have arrested that they didn't. They don't need more laws. They don't. They don't need SJR 101. They don't need their 20-pound sledgehammer when they're refusing to swing their 10. Okay. So who are they profiling? Who are they stopping? Besides veterans. Yeah. It's one of those things I don't understand. You know, you got that. They know they're veterans. They know they're veterans. You know, they run their driver's license. They run their license plates. They know they're veterans. They know whether or not they picked up a license to carry. What cops have a hard-on for veterans in the state of Idaho? Mind you, I'm not advocating that veterans should be a privileged class in the state and that they're above reproach and shouldn't be arrested for breaking the law. But I mean, if you're going to be selective, why would you target a veteran? Okay. One of the other things that's involved in that reason why is because Canyon County, which is our neighboring county right next over, probably has one of the highest density populations of a non-white demographic in the state. I know they're not arresting the rich well-to-do when they come across the border, even though that does represent financial benefit. And most of them can actually afford the lawyer to get them off for some reason or another, whatever that amounts to be. And there are certain lawyers that appreciate the income generated by having rich Boiseans arrested. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's also lawyers who sit in our legislature who are from Nampa, who do very, very, very well representing clients who've been arrested on drug charges. Select clients that have been arrested on drug charges. Anyway, I think most of you get my point on this. If the law isn't equally applied, there's no justice. And we're not going to apply the law equally. Why does the law exist? Thing about that is you run off to watch the Super Bowl and, God, you know what? Let's go ahead and figure that out. Chiefs and Buccaneers. No wonder I don't give a damn. Chiefs and Buccaneers. Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, I hate to run back and harp on the racism issue, folks, but seriously? Kansas City Chiefs? Still running that? We're honoring the indigenous bullshit lie? Come on, seriously, folks. Yeah, now I know why I don't give a damn. Yeah. Yeah, David. No. Oh, gross. Gross, gross, gross. Jen, why has cannabis not yet been legalized, or at least decriminalized on the federal level, do you think? Call it racism. Straight up. You know, it's one of those things that they continue to be able to use for the purpose of systemic racism, yes, institutional racism in the United States. Reason why is because it's a convenient way to target individuals in overpoliced communities. What are overpoliced communities? These are poor communities. They can't afford to go to City Hall and complain about the number of police in their community. Hence, overpoliced. You know, gated communities, you don't see cop cars driving around gated communities. You don't see cop cars driving around upscale white communities. You don't see cop cars in most of the apartment complexes. You see cop cars in the boroughs. You see cop cars in the ghettos. You see cop cars in the trailer park. Although I still think you see significantly fewer cop cars in the trailer park than you see in certain more segregated parts of America. No, that is what it is. The thing is as long as drugs are illegal, drugs are easily transported, drugs are easily planted, drugs are an easy, convenient excuse to harass people and deny them their liberty, whether they're using them or not, whether they sell them or not. Matter of fact, we've seen cases all across the United States where police departments have been sued and have lost because of the high incident rate of documented frame jobs. You know, where cops have been documented planting drugs on people. Specifically because of their color, because of a demographic they represented. We ever decriminalize drugs? One of those tools in the toolbox that people use to maintain institutional racism in the United States goes away. And that's really what it's about. Racists that use the institution to keep people down need drugs to stay illegal, to keep one of the biggest tools they got in their toolbox. That's that 10-pound sledge they keep slamming everybody with. Now, how does that relate to Idaho, especially with regards to our Constitution? We have a Constitution in the state. We have a Constitution for a reason. The reason for the Constitution, like all constitutions, is to limit government. It says this is what you must do. This is the limits, the controls on what good governance is. Let me go ahead and pull it up here. Idaho Secretary of State. This is ironic. We got like 26 different times that the U.S. Constitution has been changed. Idaho, we've changed our Constitution 133 times. 133 times so far. Okay, Constitution. Article 1 of the Idaho Constitution, Declaration of Rights. Section 1, the inalienable rights of man. Yes. All men are by nature free and equal and have certain inalienable rights, among which are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, pursuing happiness, and securing safety. First, that's number one. It's number one of number one. Article 1, Section 1, the inalienable rights of man. That in and of itself should place so many restrictions on what the Idaho state legislators consider appropriate legislation in the state of Idaho. The ability to preserve the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That right there makes like half the laws of the state unconstitutional. Can I get a yes? Can I get a yes? Right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness makes half the laws in the state unconstitutional, simply by that definition. I swear. I'd actually have to go through and read all the rules and all the laws. But as a general rule, it says life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. As long as you aren't hurting people and taking their stuff. Yep, hurting people and taking, as long as you aren't doing either of those, you should be good, right? No victim, no crime. Got it. Idaho, Article 1, Section 1. It's in our Constitution, man. Now, we got an interesting one here. The reason why is because this goes back to the 1890 foundation of the Idaho State Constitution. Article 1's got a lot of stuff in it. Guarantee of religious liberty, Section 4, habeas corpus, right to bail, right to trial by jury, prosecution only by indictment or information. And Section 9, we even got freedom of speech. It's embedded in there too. Right of assembly, Section 10. Keep and bear arms, 11. Yeah, we got that. That's military subordinate to civil power. Guarantees in criminal actions and due process of law. Due process. Oh, yeah, eminent domain. That's where we allow the government to steal people's property. I guess we put that in there. Imprisonment for debt prohibited. Can't send anybody to prison for owing somebody something. Doesn't work that way. Section 19, right of suffrage guaranteed. No power, civil or military, shall at any time interfere with or prevent the free and lawful exercise of the right of suffrage. Okay, for those of you who don't speak English, suffrage, not suffrage, suffrage is the right to vote. Okay. The right to vote. This enumeration of rights shall not be construed to impair or deny other rights retained by the people. See, rights of crime victims, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that's Article 1. One I found of particular interest goes to Article 3, Section 23. No, that's not it. 24. 24. I was close. Article 3, Section 24. Promotion of temperance and morality. The first concern of all good governments is the virtue and sobriety of the people and the purity of the home. The legislature should further all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality. Temperance and morality. I got my own ideas about whether or not temperance and morality, whose morality, which church's morality. Are we talking the LDSs? Are we talking the Jehovah's Witness? Are we talking Catholics, Nazarenes? We got something like 50 different sects of Christianity within the city, within the state. We even got a couple different sects of Islam now here, living in the Treasure Valley. So whose definition of morality are we using? And why should it be legislated? Especially considering we're giving everybody the right to freedom of and from religion simply by allowing it. Okay. Let's talk about that. How do you legislate morality while giving everybody freedom of religion and freedom from religion? Well, you really can't. Now, that said, yeah, well, that's another reason why it's illegal. It competes with many major monopolies. But the thing is most of those monopolies are no longer out there fighting in order to preserve the illegality of cannabis. Most of them have come to terms that it is a green option and it's something they need to invest in, rather than continue to remain divested of it. Law enforcement is still the primary organization that is fighting the legalization at this point. There's a few others throwing some money out, but for the most part, reason why drugs continue to stay illegal is a combination of the healthcare industry and law enforcement. Doctors, drugs, insurance, petroleum, beer, fiber. Yeah. So much fiber. I think the fiber's going down. But definitely doctors, drug. Yeah, the rest of them, definitely. Temperance. Now, think about the temperance movement back in 1890. WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance Union. The Idaho chapter, in its first year, the Idaho chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union was formed in 1889, 1 year before we created the Idaho state constitution. So the Women's Christian Temperance Union actually addressed our constitutional legislature at the time and raised one of the primary concerns. Now, the idea behind the Temperance Union, even though it led to two things: one, women's suffrage; two, prohibition. The goal of the temperance movement wasn't actually prohibition. The goal was about making sure families were taken care of. Because what we were having problems with at the time was men being intemperate of the use of alcohol and certain other drugs, weren't taking care of their families, weren't taking care of their children. So the idea about temperance and morality ultimately comes, and the purity of the home, mind you, was the idea that men in 1890 should take responsibility for the things they sign on to do, like taking care of the women they marry and the children they sire. It wasn't about depriving them of the use of alcohol or marijuana or any of a million other things that they could have been using. Just don't use it to the point where you go home and abuse the wife and kids. I think that's still pretty consistent here in the United States, still pretty consistent here in Idaho. Nobody wants to see people go home and abuse the wife and kids, the girlfriend and kids. No, we don't. I don't care what sort of chauvinist you think you are. You know, there's some things you don't do to your wife and kids, period. Especially in this day and age when every one of them has to work too. You know, how many people in the state of Idaho can survive on a single income these days? I can't. I do, because I'm a single man. Can't survive on a single income, though. Sticks me in an awkward situation, by the way. The thing is, we still believe in temperance. We still believe in morality. We still believe you do not beat your wife. We still believe you do not neglect your kids. You can still use with temperance and not do either of those things. Now, the ironic thing is there are only two other locations in the United States Code where temperance is used as a justification for the existence of the law. Two. Ironically, those two locations both have to deal with state control of liquor sales. One, the awarding of liquor licenses, and two, the actual sale of liquor in state-managed liquor stores. So mind you, the two locations where temperance is actually used in the Idaho State Code aren't about prohibition, but about the state controlling the sales to promote temperance of use, so that people go home and they don't abuse the wife and kids. Folks, you don't need to prohibit drugs to prevent the abuse of women and children. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Matter of fact, certain drugs these days are actually used specifically to prevent that. Psychoactive drugs for treating post-traumatic stress injury. Yes. Help reduce anger and anxiety so that people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress injury are not abusing their significant others or their children in domestic situations. We use drugs specifically to curb that. Marijuana actually curbs that a lot. So why aren't we using it? Why aren't we using, let me check the wording here. Why aren't we using all wise and well-directed efforts for the promotion of temperance and morality? Why have we decided to double down on prohibition? Why do we continue to persist in depriving people of their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? When the things that we prohibit can enable these. Anyway, that's my rant for today. You guys, go enjoy your Super Bowl. Pirates versus Buccaneers versus. Yeah, I'm going to go be disgusted. You guys, have fun. Take care. Have a good one. Remember, friends, family, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. See you on the flip side.